The Galactic Confederation had maintained peace for 40,000 years. Representatives from over 2,000 spacefaring civilizations gathered in the Great Auditorium on the neutral world of Corvus Prime, their diverse forms shifting in their seats with a mixture of anticipation and dread. The meeting had been called to address a single, unprecedented threat: humanity. At the head of the circular chamber, an enormous holographic display flickered to life. It showed a simple star map with the slow, predictable expansion of Confederation space marked in soft blue. In one remote spiral arm, a tiny pinprick of angry red pulsed like an infected wound. That was Sol, humanity's origin system. From it, tendrils of red were already spreading, not with the measured pace of a civilized species, but in chaotic, rapid bursts. Supreme Arbiter Xylos, a being of immense age whose crystalline body pulsed with a soft internal light, surveyed the assembled delegates. Beside him stood the Strategists, the Confederation's elite corps of military analysts and historians. Their leader, a gaunt, avian-like creature named Creel, stepped forward. His feathers were ruffled, a sign of deep agitation among his kind. "We have completed our analysis," Krill began, his voice a sharp, clicking sound that was universally translated. "The species that calls itself human from the planet Earth has been observed for a mere 300 of their years since achieving faster-than-light travel. In that time, they have not integrated, they have not assimilated, they have expanded, and they have fought." A murmur rippled through the crowd. A floating, jellyfish-like being from the Cygnus Veil pulsed with light. "All species fight, Strategos Krael. It is the crucible of progress. We fought the Vril, and now they are our valued trade partners. The Ithri fought a brutal civil war, and emerged with a stronger social contract. Conflict is a stage." Krill's head swiveled, his sharp eyes fixing on the floating creature. "Conflict is a stage, Ambassador Xi, a stage that concludes. For the Vril, it lasted 12 years. For the Withri, 9 months of their standard cycle. We have analyzed the human conflicts they themselves recorded before achieving FTL, what they call their world wars. The first lasted 4 years, the second 6. These are not anomalies. This is their pattern. They fight, and they do not stop until one participant is physically incapable of continuing. But that is not what makes them dangerous." He manipulated a control, and the hologram zoomed in on a specific human vessel. It was a blocky, utilitarian thing, all sharp angles and exposed machinery, a stark contrast to the sleek organic curves of Confederation design. Observe their technology. When they first encountered the warlike species of the Groll cluster, their ships were slower, their weapons less powerful, their shields almost laughable. They were outmatched in every conceivable metric. The display shifted to show a battle. Tiny human ships swarmed like angry insects around a massive, spider-like Groll dreadnought. They were being picked off, one by one. It was a massacre. "This is the Battle of Proxima's Hope," Krull continued. "A complete tactical defeat for the humans. They lost 60% of their engaged force. By every standard of warfare, they should have surrendered, sued for peace, or retreated to their core worlds to build a proper defense." "But they did not," Xylos's voice echoed, like chimes in a wind. "No, Arbiter, they did not." Krull fast-forwarded the display. The image changed. It was the same region of space, 1 standard year later. Another battle was underway. This time, the human ships were different. They were still blocky, but the weapons were new. They fired projectiles at velocities that defied physics, and their energy weapons had a distinct, brutal efficiency. They were still outnumbered, but the kill ratio had shifted from 10 to 1 against them to 3 to 1. "They adapted in 1 year," a delegate from the Andromeda Spiral whispered, his multiple eyes wide. "It took my people a century to develop a new weapons platform." The adaptation is the first symptom, but the cause is what we have classified as the escalation imperative. We have studied their history, their psychology, their very neurology. Humans do not perceive conflict as a problem to be solved. They perceive it as a challenge to be overcome. When faced with a superior force, their instinct is not to flee or negotiate, but to identify the point of superiority and render it irrelevant. He brought up a new display, a graph charting technological progression over time. For every other species, it was a gentle upward slope. For humanity, it was a jagged, vertical spike. Every time they are pushed, they jump. A military defeat is not a setback for them. It is a research grant. The Groll learned this too late. They pushed the humans, and in doing so, signed their own death warrant. The hologram showed the final outcome. The Groll homeworld, a smouldering ruin orbited by a fleet of human ships that were now larger, more advanced, and more numerous than anything the Groll could field. The Groll, once a feared warrior race, were reduced to a few scattered refugee fleets. But they do not simply exterminate, argued a mollusk-like representative. We have records. They have taken in refugees. They offer aid to devastated worlds. They have a moral code. Yes, Krill agreed, his tone chilling. They have a moral code that is terrifyingly flexible. They will weep for their enemies' children, even as they design the weapon that will make those children orphans. Their empathy is genuine, and it exists perfectly alongside their capacity for utter destruction. It is not a contradiction to them. It is a paradox they simply accept. He leaned forward, addressing the entire assembly. The Confederation classifies threats on a scale of 1 to 10. A level 10 threat is a species with the capability and intent to annihilate all life. The humans have no such intent. They are not conquerors in the traditional sense. They do not seek to enslave. They seek to improve things, to make them better, according to their own chaotic, contradictory standards. This makes them infinitely more dangerous. We are designating them an escalation species, Xylus announced, his voice silencing the chamber. This is a classification without precedent. It means that any conflict with them, no matter how minor, will inevitably escalate to the maximum possible level of violence that the humans are capable of achieving at that moment. And because their capability grows exponentially under pressure, the final level is unknowable. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted questions, fears, and accusations. Krill waited for the noise to subside. "What do we do?" Ambassador Xi finally asked. His light dimmed with fear. Kureil looked at the pulsing red dot on the map, the tendrils of humanity spreading like a slow-motion explosion. "For now, nothing. We do not provoke them. We do not challenge them. We create a cordon sanitaire, a buffer zone of empty space around their expansion. We watch. We learn. We try to understand the creature that, when you punch it in the face, doesn't just punch you back, but invents a new fist, builds a factory to mass-produce it, and then asks you how the first punch felt so they can make the next one better." He turned back to the assembly. "The time may come when we must defend ourselves. But if that day arrives, we must be absolutely certain we can win, not a battle, not a campaign, the war. Because the humans will not stop fighting until one of us is gone. It is the only way they know. They are the escalation species, and we have just introduced ourselves to them." The meeting adjourned in stunned silence. The Strategists had done their job. They had identified the threat. But as they filed out, each delegate carried a new, cold weight in their chests. They had looked at the universe, and for the first time in 40 millennia, they had seen something they could not calculate, predict, or control. They had seen humanity. The human exploration vessel Odyssey was a far cry from the warships that had devastated the Groll. It was a scientific vessel, crewed by a mixed team of xenobiologists, linguists, and engineers. Captain Elias Vance was a patient man, a quality essential for deep space exploration. For 6 months, they had been drifting through an unexplored sector, cataloguing star systems and looking for signs of life. Their mission was peaceful, purely scientific. Their long-range sensors had picked up something unusual, a faint energy signature, unlike anything in their databases. It was faint, ancient, and powerful. Following it led them to a rogue planet, a dark world drifting through the interstellar void, unattached to any star. It was cold, dead, and silent, but the energy signature was coming from deep within it. "All right, people, let's see what we've got," Vance said, looking at the main view screen displaying the dark, lifeless orb. "Geological survey first. I want to know what we're landing on." The survey revealed a network of caverns, perfectly geometric and clearly artificial, buried under miles of rock and ice. It was a discovery of a lifetime, an alien structure, impossibly old, untouched and unknown. A landing party was assembled. Along with Vance, it included Dr. Aris Thorne, the ship's xenobiologist, and Lena Petrova, a brilliant but perpetually worried engineer. They descended in a shuttle, its lights piercing the eternal darkness, and landed on the icy surface near a massive fissure that led into the depths. "This is incredible," Aris breathed, his face pressed against the viewport. "The architecture, it's not like anything in the Confederation databases. This is pre-Confederation, maybe even pre-galactic." "How do you know about Confederation databases?" Lena asked, her eyes scanning the sensor readings for any sign of danger. "Standard cultural osmosis," Aris replied with a shrug. "We've picked up their comms for decades. They think we can't crack their encryption. We can. We just don't tell them. They have a lot of history, a lot of dead species. They exited the shuttle, their suits protecting them from the cold and the thin, toxic atmosphere. The fissure led into a colossal cavern. Their helmet lights were swallowed by the vastness, illuminating only a small portion of a wall covered in strange, flowing symbols. The air was still and heavy with the weight of eons. As they ventured deeper, they found it, a chamber larger than any city on Earth, dominated by a single, silent structure. It was a machine, or what was left of one, a central sphere of a material that seemed to absorb light, surrounded by concentric rings of a crystalline metal. It was a weapon, a monument, or both. Lena moved towards a control panel, her natural curiosity overriding her caution. "The power signature is coming from here. It's in some kind of standby mode. The energy source is still active, even after all this time." "Don't touch anything," Vance ordered, but it was too late. Lena's gloved hand, almost unconsciously, had brushed against a smooth, dark panel on the console. The effect was instantaneous. The symbols on the wall flared to life, bathing the chamber in a dull, pulsing red light. A low hum vibrated through the floor, and the central sphere began to rotate, slowly at first, then faster. Holographic displays flickered into existence, showing star charts that were millennia out of date. And then a voice, ancient and resonant, filled their minds, translated by their implants. "Intruders, you have awakened the Harbinger. State your purpose." Vance stepped forward. "We are explorers from the planet Earth. We mean no harm. We discovered this structure by accident and came to investigate." The machine was silent for a long moment. The star charts shifted, zooming in on their region of space. It seemed to be scanning, processing. Earth, a planet in a system with a single yellow star. Insignificant. Primitive. "You are not the ones we built this for. You are not the Confederation." "We know of the Confederation," Aris said, his scientific mind racing. "Who built you? What is your purpose?" "I am a sentinel," the voice replied, a cold, mechanical echo. "I was built by the Forerunners, the species that ruled this galaxy before the current Confederation arose. We foresaw a threat, a pattern in the evolution of intelligent life. We built weapons, like myself, to counter it, but the threat never came. We waited. Our creators faded into the cosmic dust, but we continued to wait. The threat is still coming." "What threat?" Lena asked, her voice trembling. The machine's holographic display changed, showing a simple animated graphic. It was a timeline. For billions of years the line was flat, dotted with the brief flickering existence of countless species. Then, towards the very end, the line began to curve sharply upwards. This, the Harbinger said, exponential growth, uncontrolled expansion, the inability to accept a stable, peaceful equilibrium. The universe is a place of balance. All successful species eventually find their place in that balance. All except one. We identified the pattern eons ago, a species that, when faced with a problem, does not seek to live with it, but to dominate it. a species for whom peace is not a goal, but merely the time between conflicts in which to prepare for the next one. We called this pattern the escalation predicate. The humans looked at each other, a cold dread settling over them. The machine was describing them. The forerunners believed such a species would eventually arise and destabilize the entire galaxy. They built me to stop it. But the pattern never appeared. We thought our calculations were wrong. We entered standby mode, waiting for a final confirmation that would never come. The machine's voice changed, taking on a note of what might have been surprise, or perhaps grim satisfaction. But today, you have provided that confirmation. You have activated me. And in doing so, you have proven that my creators were right. We're not a threat, Vance said firmly, trying to project calm. We're scientists. We explore. We make contact. We're not conquerors. You lie to yourself, the Harbinger stated flatly. I have accessed the historical records embedded in your vessel's computer. I have seen your world wars. I have seen your nuclear arsenals. I have seen your treatment of your own planet, your own kind. Your history is a single, unbroken chain of escalating conflict. You have not changed. You have only become more efficient. Your presence here, your curiosity, your need to touch and explore and understand the unknown is the same drive that will lead you to war with the Confederation. It is inevitable. It is not! Ares shouted, his scientific idealism clashing with the machine's cold logic. We can choose! We can learn from the past. We can be better. Can you? The Harbinger's central sphere pulsed with a sudden, intense light. Then prove it. The Confederation has already classified you as an escalation species. They are afraid. Fear leads to preemptive action. They will not wait for you to prove you can be better. They will act to neutralize what they see as an inevitable threat. The first strike is already being planned. The hologram shifted, showing a fleet of Confederation ships, sleek and deadly, assembling on the border of human space. I am a weapon, the Harbinger continued. My purpose is to destroy the escalation predicate before it can spread, but I am also a test. My creators wanted to be certain, so I offer you a choice. Leave this place. Forget you ever found me. Go back to your world and try to convince your kind and the Confederation that peace is possible. Or you can accept my help. You can activate me fully, and I will give you the means to ensure that no one, not the Confederation, not anyone, can ever threaten you again. The chamber fell silent, save for the low hum of the machine. The three humans stared at the ancient weapon, their faces pale in its red glow. They had come seeking knowledge. They had found a choice that would decide the fate of their entire species, and the weight of it pressed down on them, cold and heavy in the lightless cavern. The machine waited, patient as the eons it had already endured, for their answer. Captain Vance held up a hand, silencing the frantic whispers of his crewmates. He stared at the ancient, pulsing core of the Harbinger. The image of the Confederation fleet massing on their border was seared into his mind. Fear was a physical presence in the chamber, cold and suffocating, but beneath the fear another emotion stirred. It was a familiar one he had felt in countless training simulations and during a single, brutal skirmish